Welcome to the Resilient Mindset Podcast, an exciting new podcast by Resilience Queen, Justine Martin. Justine is the owner and founder of the Resilient Mindset, a division of the Justine Martin Corporation. Justine draws on her years of experience and knowledge consulting with clients to develop and sustain a positive mindset. Focused on igniting your passion, purpose and power, follow the Resilience Queen each week as she delves into the mind of her guests, exploring fascinating stories and inspiring journeys.
Aldwyn Altuney is a mass media marketing expert. Known as the Media Queen, she is a TV host, speaker, photojournalist and author of multiple international best-selling books. With 38 years media experience, her PR company, Xpose Media, is the only one she knows that guarantees results in the mainstream media. She is passionate about inspiring more good news in the mass media to help decrease depression and suicide rates and lift people's spirits. In 2018, she founded the Mass Media Tribe Meetup group and a global Good News Day, which is run annually on August 8. She founded a monthly global news challenge in June 2020, has tripled her business during COVID, and recently won the 2021 BX Print Media and Photography Business of the Year. Also an animal activist, she founded Animal Action Events in 2007 and has run 15 annual charity events, so far raising awareness, appreciation and respect for all animals. In her spare time, she loves performing in her comedy duo, the Fiddly Gigglers, acting, playing ukulele, long beach walks, and body surfing.
Are you interested in becoming a published author? Or have a love of writing but unsure of the next steps? Well, join the Morpheus Writing Group. The writing group meets weekly on Fridays, 12 to 2 p.m. online or in person, led by accomplished author Justine Martin. This group is supportive, directional, and will keep you accountable to achieve your goals and vision. To find out more, check out justinemartin.com.au.
I'm fantastic, Justine. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
We're going to get straight into it. What does resilience mean to you?
Great question. Well, it's definitely being able to handle tough times and challenges and to do it with grace and ease. I think resilience is something that is something that you can build over time. And it's something that some people will just fall off the roller coaster of life, I say. Life is definitely like a roller coaster. Some people will be able to handle all the ups and downs of life, and some people won't. And for those who are resilient, they are able to deal with all the ups and downs and to be able to move through them. And resilient people that I admire are people who then turn those challenges into opportunities or turn those breakdowns into breakthroughs. So I love the whole term and concept of resilience because I think it's absolutely crucial for life nowadays, particularly with some of the things that we've seen on the planet in the last few years.
Yeah, that's right. So, we don't give up, we modify is my motto on resilience. So, there's no giving up in my world. It's like, okay, I need to probably just modify a little bit on where I was going or what I was doing in order to keep that resilience there. So what's an adversity that you faced and how did you draw on your resilience to cope?
Great question. Well, I've had quite a few dark moments in my life. I actually grew up in the Northern Beaches area of Sydney. I was a first generation Australian. I have Greek, Turkish and Ukrainian blood. And growing up in the Northern Beaches area, I was actually bullied as a kid. I was picked on because of my name, because of, my hair's a little bit different to most Aussie kids. The food I took to school was different. So kids would pick on me on all sorts of things. They would just pick on me. And also growing up, I would watch the news with my dad every night. He would put on the news, not just one channel of news. He would go through multiple channels of news. And so I grew up very depressed and angry and thinking, why is the world so cruel? Why are people like this? And I actually was very self-destructive for a long time, Justine. All through my teenage years, I went through a really hard period. I was smoking a lot, drinking a lot, doing drugs. I went completely off the rails, was very rebellious as a kid for many years. Although in saying that, I also had this other side where I was also very good at my studies up to a certain point. And I was actually dux of my primary school. And then after that, going to Mossman High School from North Balgowlah Public School, went to Mossman High School, and while there, I tended to befriend all the sort of misfits at school and all the people that had been, fostered out, and the troubled kids, and I found that I felt comfortable with the troubled kids, and through that, with that influence, wasn't a great influence on me, and I started wagging school and things like that, and before long, I was basically rebelling against my dad's strict rules. Having European background, my dad was very strict, and I basically, whatever my dad said to do, I would do the opposite. And from the age of 13 to 15, my dad had enough of that one night, and he kicked me out of the house at 15 and said, "You're not my daughter anymore." And I moved into this crazy household in Sydney with a guy who was a drummer in a band. His sister was dealing drugs. He was on drugs, and we were drinking and partying a lot. His mum was an alcoholic. It was this crazy household. And 6 months into that period, one of my lowest points that I had 6 months into that period was seeing my boyfriend sleep with my best friend in front of me at age 16. And I remember the Pretenders album was playing on the turntable at the time, and the song Don't Get Me Wrong was playing at the time. I remember very clearly. And I was so upset by what I saw. I remember just bawling my eyes out, and I called my mum in tears, and I said, "I can't handle this anymore." And she said, "Come home." And then what I did is I went home. I changed schools. I changed my environment. I went from Forest High School to Mossman High School. From Mossman High School to Forest High School from year 11 to 12. And then I studied really hard and got into a media degree. And that was then the start of turning that really low period through my teenage years into something positive. Also through my teenage years, interestingly, my dad always said to me, anger is danger. And so for a long time, I internalized my anger, which led to depression. And for many years, I did have depression and felt really helpless and hopeless to make a difference in the world. And then from there, after he said that, what happened is he introduced me to table tennis at the age of 8. I started to play table tennis. As soon as I could pretty much look over the table, I started to play table tennis. And I used to beat the hell out of the ball. In fact, I played in Geelong, Justine, a few times. And I used to play in Melbourne. Used to go down to Albert Park and play in the Australian Table Tennis Academy down there, playing table tennis. So I'd release my anger through table tennis. However, I still felt so upset with what I was seeing around me, and movies like Romper Stomper were coming out around that time. There was a lot of racism. There was a lot of darkness in the energy. I was right into Nick Cave and some really gothic, some dark music, Diamanda Galas and things like that. I got into a really dark space there. However, changing my environment to Forest High School and realizing that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And I actually had it really good at home. My parents loved me. They just didn't know, how to express that. They did the best they could with what they knew. And, now we have the most beautiful relationship. We are so close now. And so then getting into a media degree, thankfully I got into a media degree in Canberra. And I became editor of the university newspaper there, Curio, which I then edited for a year and a half. We had about 30 contributors to that newspaper. And now I felt now I can make a difference on things that really matter to me. And so whatever I saw in the media then from that point forward that upset me or angered me in some way, I would write about it. And I thought, if I just write about this thing, and if I can just influence one person who sees this story, then it's worth putting this story out. Yeah. And one of the first stories I did was an anti-duck shooting story. And the headline we had was "Go and Get Ducked." I couldn't believe people were shooting ducks for fun. I just couldn't get my head around it. And then I did another one about female circumcision, one about recycling, the environment, one about battery farming of chickens. I couldn't believe the cruelty that happens when people buy cage eggs. So I thought, well, if I can just encourage people to just, think twice before they buy something and go shopping, then it's worth putting that message out. And that's where my love affair with the media really kicked off. and I then became a journalist for over 20 years, worked as a journalist in TV, radio and print right across Australia. And now I'm on the Gold Coast. I love my life here on the Gold Coast, and I am so grateful for all those ups and downs that I've had through that period. And in between there too, there was a guy I met in Canberra. Is another point where I became very resilient after this particular situation. I met a guy in Canberra who was actually a sculptor. He was an artist at the School of Art in Canberra. And the minute we saw each other, it was love at first sight. And I thought, I'll be with this guy forever. We were together about 4 years. We moved from Canberra to Brisbane together. Lived together for 3.5 years. Amazing relationship. Everything was fantastic. And then one night he completely lost the plot and he strangled me and almost killed me this one night. And I'd never seen this side of him before. It was like a psycho had just come out of this person who I thought I knew for 4 years, and suddenly he just went crazy. And from that moment forward, that was the end of that relationship, and it was really for me a pivotal moment, because from there I had this attitude that I don't need men for anything. I'll be just fine on my own, right? And so from there, after that, I didn't live with any men for 17 years. I had lovers, I had boyfriends, etc., but nothing concrete. And here I am now. I'm 48. I've never married, had no children. I'm a huge animal lover. I guess I've had my nurturing side come out with animals. So there's been quite a few pivotal points, and then some near-death experiences I had as well. I was emceeing at the Woodford Folk Festival one year, and I had a very sore throat. I was emceeing for Colin Hay from Men at Work, who did the famous Down Under song, and I had this really sore throat. I thought, oh, it's just a cold. I'll be fine. I'll get over it. And then suddenly I realized my throat started to swell. And so I was rushed off to emergency hospital in Brisbane with a swollen throat, thinking, what the hell is going on? And it ended up being a quinsy, which is basically a bad form of tonsillitis, where you get an abscess at the back of your throat, and it can grow. And if you don't actually deal with it within a few days, you can be dead, because it'll actually block your airways. So for 3 days, I was on antibiotic drip in hospital, and that was another big wake up call for me, and another huge thing that was a reminder of how fragile life is and how precious every single moment is.
Yeah. So what are some of your coping mechanisms
to deal with hard times?
Yeah.
Great question. Nowadays, I would say I'm a lot more evolved than I used to be. In the past, I would just keep really, really busy to avoid being alone, to avoid the fear of depression. Depression can be a really ugly thing, and I went into some really dark places with depression, and it has come and gone over the years at different times. So one of my big things I've done is I've actually invested a lot of money into my personal development. I've done a lot of different courses, and through those courses, I've met some amazing people and hung out in environments where people are also up to making the most of their life and who also want more from their lives. That's been a huge thing to start with. However, the last 3 years particularly, I've been doing a lot of the inner work, a lot of the feminine work, because what I realized is that I was very masculine in my approach. And as a journalist, it's a very male-dominated field. And you sort of have to have this gung-ho, go, go, go sort of attitude, and it's constant adrenaline and, rushing around like a crazy woman. And even though I may look feminine, I had a very masculine energy about me. So the last few years, some of my coping mechanisms, have been meditation, have been women's circles. I did a medicine journey the other day. I always wanted to do some ayahuasca, and I did ayahuasca journey the other day, and I did some ancestral healing. Which was some deep ancestral trauma there that I didn't realize was there. So I did a massive clearing with that. I do yoga now. I absolutely love yoga. I love going to the beach. I play the ukulele sometimes. I watch comedies. I get creative. I do artwork, or I'll cook something nice, and I'll read a book. I'll take some time for me. Whereas in the past, I would be running away from me. I would be focusing on other things because I was too scared of what could happen if I went into a dark place and had a dark moment of depression. And I've actually had 4 friends who've taken their own lives, Justine, and in the last 2 years, we've actually had 4 times the suicide rates worldwide than we've had before that. So about 1 million people a year worldwide take their own lives, and mental health is a massive issue. So with the depression that I've noticed over time, sometimes I still go into some dark moments. However, having done a lot of personal development work, my coping strategies are now, I'm able to move through that a lot quicker. So what happens is when I go into those low moments now, I look at what is the learning here? What is this teaching me? What is there to get from this? And I look at it actually as a gift. Whenever there's a low moment, I think, okay, what is the learning? Because they say that, things either hit you get the lesson with either a feather, a brick, or a Mack truck. If you don't get the lesson with the feather hits you, you'll get the brick next, and then the Mack truck will just bowl you over.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So for me, it was, so nowadays I notice where my energy's at. And this is where taking the time to meditate and to do yoga and making time for me and self-care, getting my nails done or getting my hair done, just taking the time to nurture myself and fill my own cup up so that I can
without the guilt.
Yes.
Because as women, we're quite often guilted that, we've gone and put ourselves first.
Absolutely.
Especially the women that are in relationships or, are mums and wives, and how dare they put themselves first. But, it is important, and even if, to take care of those self-care needs.
Absolutely.
And you'll be a much healthier, happier person in the long run.
Absolutely. And since doing that inner work, which actually I did this medicine journey, this ayahuasca journey, it was a whole weekend actually of working with female medicine and male medicine, peyote and some other things. So through this whole weekend where I actually cried a lot, there was a lot of crying coming out, and I actually saw my grandparents come in, and it was this phenomenal weekend. And it was actually, it was transformational for me. And my intention through that weekend was being open to love. And then after that, I actually committed to a man for the first time in 7 years. I actually committed to a man, and now I'm in a relationship. We've been together about 4 or 5 months now. Coming out to 5 months.
Congratulations!
And it's really lovely and a beautiful thing. So now I'm actually open to love. I thought I was open to love before, but I wasn't. I was doing lovers and friends with benefits and part-time relationships, and there was no real.
But that's not open to love. That's just a Band-Aid
exactly
kind of fix in there.
That was just short-term fixes, but I actually always felt
we all have needs, but anyway, we'll move on from that.
It was very unsatisfying in the long term. It just felt empty always afterwards. And then I got to the point I was just sick of doing that, and I wanted more. I wanted a more committed relationship. And at the same time, I think it's important when you're in a relationship actually not to rely on that to actually make you happy. You don't go in a relationship make you happy. You bring your happiness and love to it, and then together, you
totally agree. And I was actually chatting to my PT this morning, and we were talking about the same thing on, so many people rely on external things or external people to make themselves happy. Happiness to me is I get out of bed in the morning, and my feet, I can feel them and they touch the ground and I can walk. I'm having a happy day, regardless of anything else that happens. I get up, I make my bed every single day, because then at least I've completed one task for the day, and then I get into the rest of my day. And that comes down to my self-care as well. Making my bed every day is my self-care. And there's nothing nicer than hopping into a freshly made bed at night time, and you get a better quality sleep as well. So
absolutely.
What's your biggest failure to date, and what resilience techniques did you use to get back up? So we've kind of brushed on this a little bit.
Oh gosh, there was a big doozy that I had back in 2002. It's interesting, when I first came to the Gold Coast, I never planned to stay here. I got a job as a sub-editor at the Gold Coast Bulletin, and then I went over to the Gold Coast Sun. I was entertainment reporter. I was having a great life, doing a lot of stories, and it was very exciting. However, I always planned to go live in America. That was the goal. And then it came to a point 2 years into being here where the place I was staying at, the lady, wanted that space for her daughter. And so suddenly I sort of had to find somewhere else to live very quickly. And I put an ad in the paper, and I said, professional lady looking for a place to rent. And I got a call from a guy called Lee. And Lee said, I've got this great place. It's a waterfront unit at Main Beach. And I went over there and I liked it. And I gave the guy bond money, rent money, and then went away. He gave me the key. And then I went back there. When I went back to the place at nighttime, there were rotten eggs in the sink. There was rubbish all over the floor. I realized the door to the balcony didn't close, and it was just an absolute mess. And I knocked on the door next door at this apartment complex and said, I said, when these people are going to come back and clean the place up? Because the guy wasn't answering his phone now. His name was Lee. This kid, he looked like a young surfer dude, was in his early 20s. Had a pregnant girlfriend on the bed. She looked about 18. Anyway, she said, "Oh, have you spoken to the manager?" And I said, "No, I haven't." So I spoke to the manager. Turns out this guy, Lee, actually owed 3 weeks in rent. And he was doing a runner. He was leaving anyway because he was getting kicked out. And so the manager I spoke to, he said he was furious. I can't believe he's done that. He owes me 3 weeks in rent. So I just gave him the keys. And at the time, I was in my early 20s, and I remember just crying and crying and crying. I felt so much shame that I had fallen for this con artist. I couldn't believe that I had fallen for this con artist, and I was beating myself up about it, right? And then I was also angry the fact that there was a con artist out there that I fell for. But this happened, and then from there, what happened is, and I was so ashamed I couldn't speak to anyone about it. Now I can speak to people about it because now I see the learning in it. And so from there I was so ashamed. And then now many years later, I look back at that situation and now I'm grateful. Why? Because from that point, I said, that's it. I'm not going to rent anymore. And I ended up buying a house in Southport in 2002. And now 20 years on to this day, I still live in this house in Southport. If that had not happened, I wouldn't have bought this house and I wouldn't have stayed on the Gold Coast. And I'm so grateful now that I'm not living in America. As much as I love America, I love visiting. I love coming back home to the Gold Coast.
But isn't it strange? Well, not strange, but good things come out of bad adversities. You may not know it at the time. I mean, I look at my story and when I was told I couldn't work anymore and, the whole blah, blah, blah thing with that. And now I look around and look at my hobby of art and what I've achieved in such a short period of time. And if I hadn't got MS, I wouldn't have picked up a paintbrush until I retired, because I used to say I'll learn that when I've retired. I'll find time when I retire, and I would have missed out in so much joy and so many years of happiness from it. So out of bad things, good things do come about.
Absolutely.
And you just got to remember that at the time, and it won't be bad forever. It can't be bad forever. You can make the choice, okay, I'm going to change. There's something in my life that I'm not happy about. If I continue on this pathway, that's the way it's always going to be, or I can go and do something different, and I have the choice that I can change and make a better person of myself or the circumstances that I'm in. We all have those choices.
Absolutely.
So who are your role models in resilience, Aldwyn?
Well, I love Oprah, I must say. I think she's amazing. I think her story is amazing, and she's so vulnerable and open and authentic. I know some people say she's gone to the dark side. I don't know about that. However, I must say that I've been very inspired by her work over the years, her Super Soul Sundays, and as a African-American woman who has become an absolute powerhouse in the media, she is someone I admire. Also Nelson Mandela. I love Nelson Mandela as well, with some of the hardship he went through, and he was just always such an amazing man from what I've seen. I admire Nelson Mandela as well. I think he's phenomenal. And Viktor Frankl's another one, Man's Search for Meaning, went through the concentration camps. And I often think about, they can take your body, but they can't take your soul. They can't take your, what's on the inside.
No, they can't.
There's one of my mentors, actually Dr. Espen. He's a pretty amazing guy as well. He broke both his legs in a motorbike accident 15 years ago, and then he became a finalist in Ninja Warrior. So he's also a phenomenal guy. And one of his sayings is, if you don't go within, you will go without.
Yep. That's so true.
I love that.
True.
I just love that that inner wisdom that we have. We tend to look to the outside for our happiness, as we said earlier, look to the outside and look for others to make us happy, whereas really we have everything we need inside us. We have all the love inside us. And I think doing that inner work too, with myself going through that medicine journey, was really powerful. And also meditation, it's different for everyone. Prayer, it could come through prayer. It could come through many different ways for people. Art, yes, exactly. Taking the time to actually, have some silence, to have some space, to have some breathing space and some thinking space and some heart space, and really feeling into what we really love. And I know growing up, I would get very upset if someone didn't like me growing up. Like if someone was nasty to me or mean to me, I'd always try to make everyone like me. You know what I mean? I always wanted to be, I was such a people pleaser. I just wanted to be liked by everyone. And then I realized when I heard this beautiful line that hurt people hurt people. When I heard hurt people, I thought, oh, it all makes sense now. It's actually not about me at all. It's actually their stuff. And so now I just send them love. So I have my little love heart to remind me, send people love if they're being nasty to you, because they obviously need it. It doesn't mean you have to hang out with those people. However, they are obviously hurting, and that is why they dump their crap on you sometimes. And that's where protecting your energy and, doing that inner work.
It's knowing your boundaries as well.
Yes.
And that's something that, I was brought up with very few boundaries. And it's only been the last 2 years since, I've been through domestic violence, that it's like, well, these are now my boundaries. And if you don't like them, then you don't deserve to be in my life. So, I'm a woman in her 50s, and I'm still learning things about myself and coping mechanisms, and this is the life that I want to live, and this is what's going to happen in order to achieve that. So
yes, so important. Boundaries are so important, and through the inner work that I did too, and knowing that we actually have the DNA of 14 generations. I thought it was 7 generations, and then recently it's actually 14 generations of DNA that we are carrying around inside us. So often, a lot of times when we've got trauma, it's not actually from this lifetime. It's actually from our ancestors, and we're carrying that in our DNA. And so getting that realization, like my heritage, I have my great grandparents were hung in the Ukraine by Stalin's men in the Ukraine. When they killed the kulaks, which were the rich landowners, my great grandparents were hung out the front of their house in outside of Kiev. And then their son was in another part of Ukraine at the time and started to speak up against the government. And then his friends said, the government men are going to come and kill you now because you're now speaking up against the government. So he ran away to Turkey, met my dad's mum, who was Greek, hence the Greek, Turkish, Ukrainian background. Yep. So all that DNA, I've been carrying that around, unconsciously carrying that trauma around, and now having done the inner work and now tapping into those extra realms, because we are fifth dimensional beings, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, tapping into that spiritual energy. I know now my ancestors are helping me help others speak up and step up, and they are supporting me on this journey, and so actually getting that understanding as well. And with the inner work, it's given me that extra support, knowing that the ancestors are there with me and doing that healing work so that the generational trauma stops here, right? Not to pass it on to the future generations.
Makes perfect sense. So, what's a favourite movie of yours that features a person's inner strength to get up?
Oh, that's a great question. Gosh, so many. The Power of One. The Power of One was a fantastic movie. I love The Power of One. Freedom Writers is another very powerful one. And one of my favourites of all time more recently was Greatest Showman by Hugh Jackman. I've had the great fortune to interview Hugh Jackman. Now, Greatest Showman, I've seen that 3 times. We actually had a movie review TV show that I started a while ago with a guy called Michael, and we actually did a review of The Greatest Showman, which is up on my YouTube channel. And they're just some of the ones I can think of. But I absolutely love movies, and I love movies based on a true story as well. And so they're just 3 I can think of.
I'm just stoked that we can go back into the movie theatres now that they're open. And I went and saw Top Gun last week, and I'm like, I'm going back again and seeing it. It's 5 minutes from the theatre, And
Yes.
I love going and watching the movies
Oh,
as well.
it's great. And actually one of the most inspiring stories is Rocky, is Sylvester Stallone's story. If you look
Yes.
up what happened with Rocky, for those who don't know, it's a fascinating story, the background of that, and how Sylvester insisted that he was the lead person in that movie. And even though
because they didn't want him as lead,
No.
they wanted someone else.
They wanted someone else, and they were even willing to pay him, Sylvester, for someone else to actually be the lead in that. And Sylvester stuck by his guns. He didn't accept the money. He followed his passion, and then he ended up making at least 10 times more after that anyway, and won a whole lot of awards. And, so it just goes to show that passion and resilience, I think, are very closely aligned, actually, because what keeps you going in the tough times is being clear and connected with your why or your vision or your values, or what is your, some people say, the big, hairy, audacious goal. What is that huge goal? What are you here on the planet for? And the more we connect with that, when we have those tough times, we realize, well, it's just a human condition situation for now. It's not going to last, and that it's there to tell us something or teach us something. And once we get the lesson, we can then move on. And
so it's like knowing your purpose.
Yes.
What's your purpose? And when I was diagnosed with EMS and had to stop work, it was like, well, what's my purpose going to be now? If I can't contribute into society with paying taxes, then, how am I going to put a roof over my kids' heads and put food in their mouths? What's my purpose in life going to be? And, I was 40 years of age, which, is midlife. And it's like, what am I going to do for the next 40 years? What's my purpose on the planet? I don't want to be a burden. How am I going to contribute back? And whereas now I know that, and it took a little bit to work it out, it didn't happen overnight, but, my purpose is to help other people gain resilience in their life and give them hope. And by sharing my story on being the Queen of Resilience, it's someone else's survival guide, and that gives people hope that, people see on everything that I've been through and go, well, if she can do it, if Juzzy can do it, I can do it. And, I have people inbox me saying, I thought I was having a bad day until I remembered you. Thanks, I think. I see that you still get out and live life despite all your adversities. I'm like, well, yeah, because we get one life and one life only. And time, to me, is the most precious commodity on the planet. You can't buy it, reuse it, sell it, or borrow it, or steal it. So be careful on who you spend it with and what you spend it on. What's your favourite quote?
Well, I love the Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. Yes. And I always add, after that, I add my quote, which is shine bright and light up all those around you.
Yeah, that's a nice quote there. So what guides you to find purpose and direction?
Well, being clear on my vision and my mission in life, and that is to lift the consciousness on the planet through more truth and good news and help decrease depression and suicide rates through that. That's very strong for me, and it drives me. It drives me. So that's really my biggest thing, is being connected with my vision and mission, and knowing that the more I step up, the more inspired I am, the more I will inspire others.
That's great. And I've spoken about in the last series of Resilience Mindset is self-care and controlling the fuel that you put into your mind, and in particular the news. And like right through the pandemic, I unfollowed people that didn't align with my values. Still friends on socials with them, but there is that little button that says that you can unfollow. So therefore I controlled what was coming in my news feed, and I stopped watching the news 2.5 years ago because it was all negative. And I know that pulls me down, and I like to read stories and listen to stories that are of inspiring people and positive outcomes. And why does the news always show the negativity on everything? Why do they do that? And you may get one little glimpse of a good news story at the end, and that might be 20 seconds and that's it. So we've spoken about this on the podcast before about controlling the fuel that you put into your mind.
Yes, so important. And we have been conditioned to believe that bad news sells, and we've certainly seen that with a lot of mainstream media. Because people are conditioned to be aware of fear and danger. And so with that, it works on our hindbrain. It works on, people's, people become alert because they're worried about, whether they could lose their life with any, they need to know about inherent danger, etc. However, more and more now we are becoming more conscious as human beings, and we are choosing more of what we actually put into our brains and what we actually see. And there's a fantastic documentary called Out of Shadows. It was actually banned off a whole lot of media when it came out. It came out June 2020 and was done by two Hollywood stunt guys. And it talks about the media programming, and it talks about, how Hollywood and how like people growing up watching dramas all the time, they think that life needs to be one big drama, and it doesn't, right? So it's actually the very first line in that documentary is, why do we believe what we believe? Why do we believe what we believe? And now, thankfully, we're at such an exciting time in the world where we have millions of media channels out there. In fact, we have 2.5 million podcasts as of this year, 2.5 million podcasts now, and so many good news outlets where we can consume news and where we can share our good news. Good News Network, Sunny Skies News, news.com.au has a good news section, and any negative can be turned into a positive. And this is what I work with my clients, looking at how we can turn their negatives into positive, or how we can turn negatives happening out in the world that are draining energy, and turn those draining energy things into positive, uplifting energy. How can we turn those negatives to positives? It's the yin yang of life.
So tell me about the three most influential people in your life and how they impacted you.
Great question. Well, my dad is one of the most inspiring people I know. He grew up really in poverty. He never knew his father. And same with my mum, actually. She never knew a father either, growing up in Turkey. Mum came from a more wealthy background. My dad came from a poor background, even though his great-grandparents were kulaks in Ukraine. Of course, they had it all taken away. They were killed on their farm, and they had everything taken away. And then his dad ran away during the Depression and during really hard times, where my dad's auntie actually died of famine back then in the early 1900s. And my dad he's one of three siblings. So his father from the Ukraine that ran away from Ukraine to Turkey, and his mum was Greek. And they had three children, and two of them died by the age of 5. One of them was a little boy, died at a year and a half. The other one was a girl, age 5. She was at a cemetery, leaning over a cemetery as mum was at church, and a little candle caught a light on her dress, and she ran away from the crowd, little 5-year-old girl, which was my dad's sister, sorry. And and she died. She got 3rd-degree burns and died at age 5. So my dad was the only survivor of that union, and he worked his butt off. He worked so hard to go from, being a carpenter to becoming a civil engineer to actually leaving Turkey, because he was actually a Christian in a Muslim country. There's 99% Muslims in Turkey. And so he was actually discriminated against because he was a blonde kid in Turkey. His name was Michel. And of course, Turkey and Russia were at war with each other for many years. So anyone from Russia in Turkey at the time were considered infidels, or were considered traitors. So even though he grew up there, he was never accepted as a Turk. And he worked really hard and came to Australia. In 1970, they migrated to Australia with 2 suitcases, my parents, and
amazing
2 suitcases and $300 in their pocket, and started life afresh in Sydney. And
they're courageous,
amazing. So definitely my dad and my mum, I'd say the two of them, they've been together 52 years this year. They are so adorable, and I make time for them every week. We see each other at least once a week. They live on the Sunshine Coast, which is 2.5 hours north of the Gold Coast here. And we make time every week for each other to see each other, and they're so precious. I'm so grateful. My dad survived 4 heart attacks, prostate cancer, diabetes, and he's still going. And mum's starting to get dementia. So every moment is precious with them. So they're two of my most inspiring people, is my parents. A third inspiring person in my life, I would say That's a tricky one. People I actually know personally. I've had so many mentors over the years that have inspired me. I'd say the other one would probably be Dr. Espen. Dr. Espen has been one of my more recent mentors.
Yep.
And I've been doing DMT breathwork with him and did his elite mentorship program with the business program recently.
Yep.
And I've had some massive changes in my life just even in the last year or so that I've been doing work with Dr. Espen. So I'd say he'd be the other one who's really inspired me a lot as well.
Well, they're three great inspirational people in your life then. Okay, I've got a few fun questions for you now. If you won $10 million tomorrow, how would you spend it?
Well, I'd pay off my debt, mortgage. I'd pay off my mortgage and I would buy a big block of land and I would turn it into an animal sanctuary retreat space somewhere near the water. This is my goal, is to actually have an animal sanctuary retreat space and connect people with nature and also have a place where we stream positive media out to the world.
Awesome. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Gold Coast.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm living in paradise here. Absolutely. In fact, we've got
yes, I'm
paradise
rubbed up in Victoria. It's freezing down here at the moment. What was your favourite subject in school?
It was actually, believe it or not, it was actually English. I actually became very good at English.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah, I was very, very good at English. And I love poetry. I love William Wordsworth as a kid.
Have you written any poems?
Yes, I have. I've done quite a few poems. Yeah,
cool.
I love it.
Well, if you need someone to publish them, let me know.
Oh, okay.
Just
Thank
get
you.
a plug in there for Morpheus Publishing.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's chat.
Yeah. I'm actually starting a writing group open to the public. It's a hybrid on Fridays from 12 till 2, and all those details will be in the bio as well. So another quirky question, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I like pineapple, yes.
Yeah. Cool. Tea, coffee, hot chocolate or Milo or wine?
Oh, well, it depends on the time of day. But I must say, I do love a strong coffee. I grew up on Turkish coffee and I do have a strong coffee every morning. I do not do instant. Instant coffee is full of pesticides, very bad for you. However, I do have a good percolated or plunger coffee.
Half luck. 30 years since I've had coffee.
Oh, wow. So
yeah, I'm allergic to it. But anyway, that's another story. Toilet paper forwards or backwards?
I'd say forwards because it's a lot easier to pull.
Yes. Right. What are 3 books you'd recommend to my audience and why?
Oh, wow. Well, I love Love Signs by Linda Goodman. That really got me interested in astrology from a very early age. So Love Signs, a fascinating book. Another one is, I would say, Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. That's been an absolute game changer as well. And a third book, that's a tricky one. There's so many good ones. There's The Power of Now is a great one by Eckhart Tolle, and Good to Great. Good to Great is another great one.
Some great recommendations there. So what's one question you'd wish that I'd asked and how would you have answered?
Oh, what a great question. This is a brilliant interview. I'm loving this, Justine. Oh, wow.
We've got new questions. So these are, my listeners will be going, she hasn't asked that one before. So these are all new questions. So look out, series 2.
What's the question? Oh, gosh. Well, I had a challenge in that I actually have been pregnant once. And I would say, the question would be, is there something that you've thought in the past that maybe you wish you hadn't thought, right? And there was this thought that I had that I've wondered, I always wondered what it would be like to be pregnant. However, I never was excited about bringing a child up. And what ended up happening is I got pregnant about 10 years ago. I got pregnant and I miscarried because we are so powerful, aren't we? We are so powerful with our thoughts. And I wanted to know what it was like to be pregnant and was not excited about bringing a child up. And so what I would say is be very careful about what you think and feel because it can make a massive difference.
And what you put on your vision boards and that. Because my example is I always wanted a house cleaner and a gardener and then I'd known I'd made it in life. Now I have a house cleaner and I have a gardener and I've had that since about 2013, 2014, because NDIS pay for it. So I actually became disabled. When I became disabled, and then the government service now pays for my house cleaning and my gardening. So be really specific when you're putting it out to the universe on what you want. So that was my game changer on putting it out
absolutely,
as well.
Be very specific. And here I am now at 48. Now I'm in a committed relationship, and now the partner I'm with actually does want children, and I actually want children now. I realize I just had fear of the commitment of bringing children up, and so now we've been practicing, and let's see. Watch this space. It's still possible, and it may still happen. So let's see.
Fingers are crossed for you.
Thank you.
Put that out to the universe.
Well, I think if I hang around you, Justine, with the amount of children and grandchildren, etc., you've been a great breeder. So I think if I hang around you enough, some of it will rub off, right?
Oh, you have no idea. One day I'll tell you the backstory to all that too.
Yes.
So where can listeners find you online?
All my links are at linktree/Aldwyn, so linktr.ee/Aldwyn, ALDWYN. You'll find all my links. I do ongoing events online. We have a free publicity secrets masterclass that I do, and webinars on how to gain free publicity. Also,
which
I encourage.
I've done.
Yes, fantastic. And you enjoyed it, Justine?
Yeah, loved it.
Fantastic, and great to see you've been getting heaps of media coverage, which is so awesome. So happy to hear that. And we also have every month we have a global good news challenge, which is all about sharing more truth and good news in the world. And it's doing a simple Facebook Live, just sharing your name, what you do, 3 things you're grateful for, and a piece of good news. You will feel amazing, and people who see your good news challenge will feel amazing. It's free marketing for you. We promote it on our social media as well. So details on that are also in that Linktree link, or go to the Global Good News Challenge Facebook page and pin to the top of the page. You will find details on that. I also encourage you to check out my Conscious Community Global Facebook group as well. We've got over 700 members now in just 5 weeks, and some phenomenal documentaries featured in that group that will blow your mind. Conscious Community Global. So lots of ways we can connect: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all over the place. You will find me. Just Google my name and you'll see me as well. And all about lifting the energy out there, and everything we do makes a difference.
It does. Well, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you on the Resilience Mindset podcast.
Thank you, Justine. I've loved it. It's been so cool. I look forward to chatting with you on Media Queen TV sometime soon too. So keep an eye out.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll book a time after this.
We will. Anyway, listeners, you know the catchphrase. Until next time, stay resilient.
With over 11 years public speaking expertise, Justine thrives on delivering a powerful and empowering keynote to audiences of all sizes. From a packed room of 500 people to an intimate gathering of 50 people, Justine will command the room with her inspiring journey and engaging antidotes. Email hello@justinemartin.com.au to book Justine for your next event. We hope you enjoyed the Resilience Mindset podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to get your weekly fix listening to Resilience Queen Justine Martin. Follow Justine on social media at Resilience Mindset, or log on to justinemartin.com.au. And until next time, remember, life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient.